Hi there, how's it going? Today I want to talk a little bit about breastfeeding, namely weaning a toddler off the breast. It can be a difficult thing to do, and I know it's something that a lot of people have questions about. It's something that I've also done quite recently. My 3-year-old weaned just a couple of months ago, just after he turned 3, and my other child weaned when she was 2.5 years old. So I understand what it's like to wean a toddler, and I have 6 tips that I want to share with you now, that some of which worked for me on different children and that hopefully will work for you too. And do let me know if there's any other tips you can think of or that have worked for you. And if any of these work for you, do let me know as well down in the comments. So the first thing that I want to say is that it is something that should, and I believe works best if it's gradual and gentle. Obviously that means it's going to take time. I think weaning cold turkey is not helpful for either the mother or the child. It can be quite traumatic, and that's why I just think that a gradual approach is better, and it's one where you can accommodate and adjust in time. Like my daughter took about 5 months to wean, and she was very attached. So my son took a little bit less, but it's just the type of personalities they have, I think, and how their relationship with the breast as well. I definitely think taking a gentle, gradual approach is the best way, and that would be my first tip. Tip number 2 is to distract or defer. Now, when I say distraction, I don't mean to distract the child from you as such. I mean more distract them from breastfeeding. So rather than trying to push them away or do something different without you, to do something engaging with them, like reading a book or telling them a story, doing some coloring, doing something, playing or doing something with them where they're fully engaged with you, and so they're getting your attention without needing the breast. And I think a lot of the time when it's a toddler, they're around playing, and the easiest way to just be with you is to breastfeed. And that's great if that's what you want to do, but if you're hoping to wean, then looking for a different approach, so a distraction from the breast, can sometimes work. The other thing is to defer. Now, this is kind of like, just to put a limit on, let's say, where you breastfeed. Like, let's say there's a certain chair in the house that your child likes to breastfeed in, then maybe defer and say, look, in 10 minutes we can sit down, or when we get home, or to put a little limit on it, because that's okay. Once you make good on that promise, they know that it is going to come. It's just a little deferral, and that is, I suppose, part of the weaning process for them to understand that it's not on demand whenever they want. It's a two-way relationship. So distract or defer is, like, I think really, really works well, especially in daytime. And I guess that's how my two both started the weaning process, was using those 2 techniques. So my tip number 3 would be to explain to your child what your aim is. When they reach that age where they're a toddler and you are starting to impose limits, like I explained in the previous tip, it's okay to explain to them what your plan is. Like to say, mommy doesn't want to feed right now, or whatever your word is for breastfeeding, and to explain why. Mommy is busy, mommy is sore, mommy is tired, and they will understand, because they understand you at that age. And I think that they'll react better to the limits then that you impose on them. So explaining, I think, is really important, and it definitely works, but you have to be patient with it. They might not want to hear it at the beginning. They might be annoyed or angry, but if you just explain gently and firmly why you don't want to breastfeed at that particular time, or whatever it might be, then I think that really works, and it lets them understand that they're part of the relationship, and they can explain why they might need it, and that's okay, and you can decide if that's worthy or not. But yeah, explaining, sorry, I'm dying with the heat here. It's so hot here. I think explaining it is really important, and it shows that you trust them enough to understand what you're going through and what you need them to do. Number 4 would be to connect with your child or your toddler in a different way. So finding alternative ways of connecting with them, let's say at bedtime or during the night, when they're very used to just having the breast available to them, so you could, rub their back. That worked for my son. He loved his back being rubbed. You could cuddle, get them to hold your breast, because that's still a connection, and I think that's great if that works. If that works for them. Having, I suppose, a close physical contact, but also giving them your 100% attention during that time. That definitely worked for my kids when I was trying to wean them at nighttime. And to have some other way of connecting with them. We co-slept, so it wasn't a case of, they were missing out on that connection, that physical connection, because we were still sleeping together when they were weaning, which I actually think really helped. Finding a way of connecting with them physically without breastfeeding can be really beneficial, because it's still maintaining that physical connection, but just without breastfeeding. Tip number 5 is to change your routine. So this can be good during the day and during the night. Let's say if you're used to getting up at a certain time, get up a little bit earlier than your toddler, so they're just waking up and feeding straight away. Or if you're usually around the house and they find, that when you sit down, they want to feed, just go out a little bit more, or change your routine up a little bit so that they won't be as needy for the breast during the day, let's say. And then at nighttime, you can also change your nighttime routine, getting someone else to put them to bed, or changing your nighttime routine a little bit, using different forms of connection, like I said in the previous tip, or just changing how you go about bedtime, But definitely getting somebody else to help at bedtime is good for that. Night weaning can be a little bit more difficult. For mine, it did happen during the night, but I needed those other forms of connection, like rubbing the back, singing, talking softly, having another, a physical contact with them at night, and re-explaining why you can't breastfeed at that particular time. And over time, they understand and it works. And then my final tip would be to acknowledge the huge change that comes with weaning. It's something that it's like bittersweet. If it's something that you want to happen, you might be relieved, but at the same time, there's a kind of a nostalgia for that relationship, because it's such an important and sacred, special relationship, the breastfeeding relationship. And I guess it's a big step, from babyhood to childhood for your toddler, or depending on what age your baby or toddler or child is when they wean. And there's different ways you can do that. Some people like to maybe get a photo shoot of them breastfeeding, so before you fully wean, to have a memento of the breastfeeding relationship, which can be really, really nice. Or you can also get a memento of a piece of jewelry with breast milk in it, or something like that as a kind of acknowledgement. Also, you might be feeling very mixed about it, like you want to wean, but at the same time you're nostalgic, and it's I suppose part of motherhood to start to let go, of your baby slowly. And I suppose it's just good to maybe even journal it, or do something to acknowledge how you're feeling. And it's often good to meet other mums who have weaned an older baby or toddler, like going to a breastfeeding support group or something like that, where you can actually talk about it, or to ring a breastfeeding counsellor and talk it through, because it's a big deal. And it should be a big deal, because it's an amazing achievement to have breastfed up to toddlerhood. And it's something, I definitely think it's something that needs to be acknowledged. And then I'm just going to give you a bit of a bonus tip here at the end, because it's always nice to have some resources. I am going to link below a couple of resources that I think are good. One is a night weaning method by Dr. Jay Gordon, and I didn't use it myself, but I have heard it's a nice, gentle way of night weaning your toddler. Now, it's not for under ones. And then there's a couple of books that you can get to read to your toddler if they're being very resistant to weaning. You might like to read, and it will kind of, I suppose, subconsciously enter their psyche, and they might then understand a little bit better and be open to weaning. If you try and there is complete resistance, I think it's best then just to leave it for a couple of weeks or a month and then try again, because they're just not ready. But if you are really, really ready, then try some of these techniques, and at least should cut it down. And it's no harm imposing limits on your toddlers. I think it's actually quite healthy, because you're going to have to start imposing more and more limits as they get older. And as long as they're done lovingly and, you know, they're explained and they understand why, then I think it's really great. Okay, so that's all I have to say about weaning for today. If you have any questions, please put it down in the comments below. Remember to like this video if you have enjoyed it, and subscribe if you'd like to hear some more from me. Thanks a million for watching. Take care.